Well, a very good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor David Cantor, and as Director of the Refugee Law Initiative, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 6th and final session of the 12th Annual Refugee Law Initiative Seminar Series, run in partnership this year with the University of London Refugee Law Clinic. This series of 6 webinars delves into the issue of asylum after COVID-19, looking at the UK's new plan for immigration in global context. Our objective here is to ask how, as the COVID-19 pandemic grinds on, states and other actors are re-engaging with the issue of asylum. Each session in this series has thus evaluated distinct aspects of the UK's so-called new plan for immigration in detail and by putting it in the context of broader global trends. In the preceding 5 sessions in the series, we considered the local and global implications of proposals in the new plan for immigration and its 2021 Nationality and Borders Bill that seek to introduce various restrictive measures with the intention of limiting access to asylum in the United Kingdom. In this final session, titled Refugee Counter-Proposals to the New Plan, Integration and Recognition, we step back from the restrictive approach adopted by the new plan to explore what changes refugees themselves see as a priority for improving the quality of asylum in this country. Today's discussion is organised by RLI Visiting Fellow Dr. Ammar Bajboj, and it will be based around his ongoing research on integration. In this session, he and a number of other prominent Syrian refugee professionals in the UK will be discussing some of the main themes and reflections that emerge from their lived experience of being refugees in the UK. In particular, deriving from these insights, the conversation will focus on the challenges of getting professional qualifications recognised and the importance of having refugees' skills and work experience properly acknowledged for the purpose of integration. The format of the seminar starts with a short presentation from Dr. Bajboj himself, who is a Syrian refugee here in the UK. He'll be talking about his research into the integration of Syrian refugees in the United Kingdom. I'm then going to chair a fairly open discussion amongst the other Syrian professional participants on their perception of how the UK can better utilise the immense potential that refugees like themselves bring to our country. Of course, it goes almost without saying that this discussion assumes still greater relevance given the war in Ukraine and the new refugee crisis that it has unleashed in Europe. So at the outset, I'd just like to very briefly introduce each of the speakers. First of all, of course, Dr. Ammar Bajboj, who is a visiting fellow at the Refugee Law Initiative and previously a legal academic in Syria. Our presenters for the discussion, I'll also introduce very briefly now. We start with Samira Mohandes, who is a PhD student at Imperial College London. Welcome, Samir. Tanya Archit, who is a TV presenter and producer at Al Arabi TV in London. Again, a very warm welcome to you, Tanya. Amjad Al Aswad, who is a community content specialist working with social platforms. Again, we're really very, very pleased to have you here. And last but certainly not least, Adnan Haj Omar, who is the CEO at London Premier Centre and the founder of Arabisque Television and Media. So again, a very warm welcome to you too. During this wider discussion in the session, these panelists will be engaging with one another and with questions and comments from you, the other participants in the session. So as we go along, please do have a think about the kinds of questions you'd like to ask and start typing them into the chat box that you can see alongside the Zoom screen. Finally, please do keep your microphones on mute and your videos off unless you're a presenter. We will also be recording this session, the podcast of which will be available in the coming weeks on the Refugee Law Initiative website. So, without any further ado whatsoever, let me turn to our first speaker. I'm really absolutely delighted to welcome our visiting fellow at the Refugee Law Initiative, Dr. Ammar Bajboj. And Ammar, I've just given you co-host permissions so you can share your presentation with us all. Over to you. And don't forget to unmute as well.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Yes, you should be able to share your presentation as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is actually such an honor and pleasure to me to be here. And thank you, David, for your introduction. Let me just try to share my screen. Can you see it? Yeah, you should be now be able to see my screen presentation title, Integration of Skilled Refugees into UK Labour Market. Well, basically, the title of my presentation is also title of my research I'm doing recently. So I could talk maybe for hours about this issue, but I will make a deal with up to 10 minutes. I will try my best. Like the structure of the talk, I will speak briefly about the who are the highly skilled refugees, also what the impact of skilled refugees in the labor market, and what the factors that influence the refugees' access to the employment. I will speak briefly also about the interviews I conducted with some skilled refugees during my research so far, and the suggestion about some practical solution regarding the problems facing refugees integrated into the labor market. First, let's just be quickly defining who are the skilled refugees. Skilled refugees are ordinary refugees that have fled violence, war, persecution, or conflict in their countries and have moved to other countries to get safety. However, unlike ordinary refugees, skilled refugees have special skills, knowledge, and training that they can apply at work. In addition, they may have attended university, college or technical school, or they have learned their skills at work. Examples: doctors, teachers, lawyers, engineers. But why it is matter? Why I'm talking about the skilled refugees? Why I'm focusing about the only skilled refugees? What's the impact that the skilled refugees in the UK labor market? There are so many benefits of skilled refugees if we can help them integrate in their qualification into the UK labor market. For example, after Brexit, now I think there's kind of shortage of skilled laborers. For example, the skilled refugees can help filling a gap in professional and highly skilled occupation. This is simply when refugees are employed in sectors which is in UK labor market had not enough people to employ in these sectors. For instance, healthcare, education sectors in the UK, where there are still shortages. Also, maybe skilled refugees can be very helpful addressing labor market imbalances. Here, what the meaning of the labor market imbalances is the situation where there is a misalignment between skills supply and demanded in the economy. Also, refugees in general, once they are integrated in the labor market and they get work and job, and they will be contribute more in taxes and social contribution than they receiving in benefit. This is when refugees contribute to the economy through taxes, like the skilled refugees being allowed to own their own business, like law firm, clinics, IT firms, even restaurants, and many more, and then contribute to the UK economy as a supplier and or employer, and even buyer, but not only employees. Also, refugees can boost the working age population. As many know, the professional refugees arrive with the skills and contribute to the human capital development of receiving countries. I will just like talk briefly about my my interviews, my research. Like, you know, like currently I'm conducting interviews with a group of skilled refugees, 21 participants so far. My target actually like to get like 30. This is my capacity now because it's like kind of self-funded research. So far I interviewed like around like 21 participants of refugees. So the open-end questions were supposed to assess the participants' questions focused on educational and job background, employment status, field, credential recognition, innovations, and opinion. Actually, these factors were essential in interview because they allowed the refugees to have unlimited responses, deliver more unexpected insights regarding their job search and stay in the UK, and give opinion and sentiments. For the conducted interviews, most refugees' employment was impacted by language, age, and education, lack of training. However, there were like other factors like gender, length of residence, and social networking. For 21 returned questionnaire, it was clear that women refugees' employment like was highly influenced by culture and religion, but both women and men age influence their employment as a refugee in the UK. What was also notable in the interviews actually that many of participants mentioned that the recognition of a previous qualification was a crucial issue in their seeking of job. Like it was really an obstacle and they struggle to get their certification recognized by the UK system. Also, the lack of clear special programs to prepare skilled refugees to integrate them into labor market was also an obstacle for others. What the suggestion? What the practical solution for this issue? Actually, I'm still looking like during my research about like kind of solution to help refugees skilled refugees integrate into the labor market. But so far, like I suggest like through my research, some practical solution. For example, like refugee skills verification and identification for the skilled refugees to be integrated into labor market. Their skills must be identified and verified through the competency mapping. Also, very important issue, the recognition of a prior learning. This is like very crucial issue for skilled refugees to be integrated into the UK labor market. This can help skilled refugees acquire a formal qualification that matches their knowledge and skills, and thereby contribute to improving their employability, mobility, lifelong learning, social inclusion, and self-esteem. Also, another solution can be like job readiness skills development. This through like help them to be ready to work through vocational training courses, career advice, business support, and prepare refugees to meet their current market skills requirement. Finally, the matching refugees' talents with what employers need. This is also a solution to integrate refugees into the UK labor market. This maybe can be done like through many ways, for example, using online tools where employers can post jobs, and a charity helping refugees will directly assist refugees in resume development to apply for a job. Just like I want to comment before I finish quickly, just like when refugees usually, because I am myself refugees, when refugees leave their home nations, they might leave their home, beloved ones, memories, but they don't leave behind qualifications, educations, career goals, and ambitions. So that, like, I think, I believe governments and relevant organization can do a lot within working to support refugees, build experience, confidence, and insight into British culture through workshops like skills development and work placement to to help refugees in their search for sustainable employment. Thank you so much.
That was really fantastic, Ammar. Many thanks indeed for sharing your preliminary results of your research with us. It's great to see how it's coming along, but it's great also against this rather gloomy backdrop of the new plan for immigration, which seems, very focused on restricting access to asylum and making it much more difficult for refugees to integrate in the long run. That we've got people like you who understand well the context in which refugees find themselves and are thinking constructively about ways in which refugees do in fact contribute to society and how they could be assisted to do so to an even greater extent. And I think that there, you've got a lot of nice ideas, things like competency mapping, that's fantastic. There's all sorts of stuff there that I'm sure you'll be able to build on in your eventual research paper and policy briefings that will be of absolutely great value to those who are working in this policy area. It really does shine a light on the issue, but I think to shine, if you like, more of a personal light, given the backdrop of your study, what I'd like to do is to go over to our panel of 4 skilled refugees who have joined us today. These are, of course, all people who are highly educated, highly skilled, as many in the Syrian refugee diaspora were, and indeed many in the Ukrainian refugee flow are likely to be too. And I'd like to go through a couple of questions, bits of discussion with our 4 participants today, really to kind of bring out a little bit more detail on some of those themes that you've so well put forward and presented for us as a starting point. So turning now to our panelists, I'm going to ask you one by one a series of questions. And I think that the first question that I'd really like to put to you as panelists who are highly skilled Syrian refugees in the UK, the first thing I'd like is, could you tell us a little bit about the kind of work or role that you have here in the UK and how it compares to what you did in Syria? And as kind of part of that, if you could also speak a little bit to how your experience has been of finding, work and education opportunities in the UK as a refugee, as a Syrian refugee particularly. So I'm going to ask if you could speak each about 2 or 3 minutes to that. And maybe I could turn first of all to Samira Mohandes, who is PhD student at Imperial. Samira, would you like to kick off?
Thank you, David. So in terms of what I do on parallel to my PhD, I'm an infrastructure designer. So when it rains, I design an infrastructure system like a drainage network to take this rain and direct it and convey it into water courses. So when you have flooding, you can blame me. I'm joking. But basically, yeah, this is my main field. And back in Syria, I was a civil engineering student. I didn't have any experience in Syria. So I came to the UK as a civil engineer. And this is where I started my journey when I started the master's in civil engineering. And I finished the master's. And straight away, I managed to find a job in infrastructure. So my first job was in a company in West England, in Newbury. And and then I started a PhD, part-time PhD at Imperial College London. And here I am.
Fantastic. Many thanks, Summer. I mean, it sounds like, the role that you came with was one that was very much in demand in the UK. And I wonder if that's going to be the case for some of our other speakers. I'd like to pose the same question now, if I may, to Tanya Archid, who is TV presenter and producer at Al Arabi Television London. Could you talk us through that question, Tanya, please?
Okay, thank you so much, David and Ammar, for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves maybe more, or to thank this country for hosting us, welcoming us, and everything. I'm pharmacist qualified from Damascus University, and I worked in pharmaceutical companies like multinational companies like Novartis, Johnson & Johnson for a few years before the conflict in Damascus or in Syria started. Then I decided to come to London to do a master's degree in pharmaceutical science. And I had a dream at that time that everything will be, the war will be end very soon. But unfortunately, the case was not like this. Everything was increasing dramatically. We started losing friends, member of families, with opening a Facebook page every day and see people who are dying. Then I decided to make from this cosmopolitan city my new city and to start a new life. So I applied for home office. They gave me the refugee settlement immediately. I was at that time working as a salesperson in a pharmacy, not as a pharmacist. Then we will come to this topic later on. But yeah, as a pharmacist. And then I followed my dream because I had a passion since I was a child to be a TV presenter. And I did a training in BBC Arabic. And then I started working with Saudi Arabia TV from London for 3 years. And then for Al Arabi TV till now.
So it sounds like your experience, Tanya, has been quite different from that of Samira, in that you were able to shift and pursue a dream in the UK really quite successfully. We'll come back to some questions that I have later on, both for you and for Samira, about, you know, what were the kinds of opportunities and obstacles that you faced in this as somebody with refugee status. But thank you very much for talking us through that so eloquently. Can I ask the same question again now to Amjad Al-Aswad, Community Content Specialist. Amjad, could you talk us through a little bit about the work you do here and what you did in Syria and how you found it in terms of accessing work in the UK?
Yes, thank you very much, David. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I'm doing now for the moment, I'm social specialist, content moderator on social platforms. I would start briefly from my work in Syria. I graduated from Damascus University English Literature in 2003. At that time, two of my friends who had clearing forwarding and office in one of the borders with Jordan, Syrian border with Jordan, they asked me, Amjad, if you can join us, we can benefit from your language, from your English language, so we can expand our work and target foreign companies. So, but they said, we can't pay any wages for you. You are a partner in the office. Whatever we get, we share it together. So I started from that time. The gamble really paid off. I could contact companies and became their client or a clearing agent for their imports from oil-rich countries, from UAE. And by the way, Tanya, Johnson & Johnson was one of the clients. So I did some cleaning jobs for them. However, it lasted for 6 years. Then I changed job, family business things. And when I came to the UK, I thought I can continue with what I had as a clearing forwarding agent or someone expert in logistics and transportation, air freight, shipping broker. For that reason, I studied master in 2017. I studied master in logistics and supply chain management from the University of Westminster. Yes, I've been, since I get asylum or resettled in the UK in 2013, I have been through so many different jobs. From the beginning, I realized that it is completely different system from what we have in Syria. Whenever you go to an interview, so many jobs I applied, I need like native level English speaking. So it was an obstacle for me to get through these or jobs or any opportunities within the clearing, forwarding, shipping industry. I went to the qualification, so I thought this will enhance my opportunities. Yes, it did actually. But at the same time, I was surprised with something with DBS check that I need to be for more than 5 years or maybe 10 years have enhanced check against my about my career. So I lost an opportunity. It was a great opportunity actually to be air freight agent in Heathrow Airport. So yeah, from that time I realized that I have to go to find any job suitable for me to use my bilingual skills. At the same time, I'm still considering myself not on the level to find any job, because without that skills, bilingual skills, I can't find any other job. Yeah, so many, if you want to expand on, yeah, Ammar, you came to the language obstacle or language challenge. It's really a big challenge here to speak a native language, native level. If I can speak about others.
That sounds good. We will come back to you, Amjad, and talk about some of the challenges that you faced and the opportunities as well. But that's a really useful introduction, and I like the fact that there seems to be quite a common thread amongst all three speakers in accessing education, and that's been something useful. But this issue of bilingualism you raise obviously is an important one, as well as the question about a different system. And that I think is often quite difficult when you arrive to some extent unplanned in another country. But what I was particularly keen on, and maybe we'll come back to, is the need for a DBS check, which is a check that you need if you're handling sort of sensitive information or working in sensitive areas. And it's interesting there that it had never occurred to me that refugees would particularly struggle having to document jobs and addresses over a large number of years, which is one of the conditions for that. So, I mean, that may even be an issue of policy that Ammar and others amongst you might want to advocate on. One could look for an exception to be made for refugees, for instance. Thank you ever so much, Amjad. Come on, finally to Adnan Haj Omar, who I think is in a rather different sort of business. Adnan, would you like to talk us through the questions which we've posed to the others? If you unmute yourself, the floor is yours.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me in this excellent seminar along with these fantastic people. Now back to your question on what I do at the moment. Compared to what I used to do in Syria, where I worked as a full-time lawyer in our 40 years, old law firm and maritime law lecturer in the local university. I'm presently the Chief Operating Officer of the London Premier Centre Training Institute. LBC is the UK training provider based in London, specializing in international short courses. The institute has a comprehensive portfolio of more than 500 professional development courses and seminars covering various professions. LBC operates globally in many cities worldwide. I'm also the founder of Arabesque Media, a media agency launched in 2013. I found out that London is a convenient place for such a business without restrictions as we experienced in my country. More recently, due to the high demand from the Arabic community, either in the UK or overseas, I provide consultations in immigration law for national and international clients. Additionally, I provide legal consultancy services for individuals and corporate companies in maritime law. Thank you. I think David. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Adnan. I mean, it sounds to me like you've managed to find quite a niche here, and in some ways that niche plays on some of the differences between Syria and being able to take advantage of, for example, the media freedoms in the United Kingdom. But equally, developing those kinds of businesses, it strikes me that you're to some extent playing on the kinds of networks that you were able to draw on previously, offering particular kinds of courses to those who
basically I use the entrepreneurship like skills that I have to find a way in this country.
Okay, so entrepreneurs, it sounds like, have quite some opportunities here despite some of the other difficulties. And as a fellow lawyer, Always glad to hear that you've managed to land on your feet. So good. Okay, well, thanks everybody. That's great to have the brief introduction so we get a sense of who you are, and in terms of being a highly skilled Syrian refugee, what it is that you do here as compared to at home. What I'd like to ask each of you to do now is to just think a little bit about moving within the Syrian community here and within the refugee community in the UK. What do you think are the main opportunities that you've seen, not just for yourself, but for Syrian refugees in general, to be accessing work or education in the UK? And what kind of skills and benefits do you think Syrian refugees could offer beyond that if they were given further chance to do so? So Tanya, I'm going to start with you. I'm rotating my starting person. I hope that's okay. So would you like to speak a little bit to that within the Syrian refugee community? You know, what are the main opportunities that you've seen that Syrian refugees have been able to exploit here?
Okay, I forgot to tell you that I had the chance to work even with the Refugee Council in terms of interpreting. So maybe I can give a clearer picture about it. So let's say that London is really a very cosmopolitan place, UK in general, and London in special. So very cosmopolitan place, a lot of help, especially for people who are arriving. They have nothing, they lost everything. So it's a very welcome way to receive those people. They were so helpful in giving courses, maybe basic trainings, accommodation, all these things. However, as Ammar mentioned in his presentation, that we left our memories, our families, our properties, everything, but we have our qualification with us. So that's why maybe we couldn't meet. I'm talking about myself. I'm a pharmacist qualified from Damascus, and I have my experience. So when I used to work here as a salesperson in the pharmacy, it's very sad that you know all the medicine, but you cannot work as a pharmacist. I need to apply for a course which is 2 years, and it costs tens of thousands in order to be registered as a pharmacist. So I already did my master's degree, and I already paid 10 years ago 16,000 because I came here not as a refugee, as a student. So it was already paid. So for me, it was too much to start again from zero, to apply for a university which is not in London, to leave my job in order to study, maybe to attend the labs full-time hours, whatever. So it is a big hustle, and in my opinion, for no reason. So I think that's why you can see, for example, a lot of Syrian people here, they are opening restaurants, they are working something different than their education, because they, especially the people who come in the middle age, maybe for a child, it's okay, 6-7 years he is going to school, he will integrate within a few months, he will be like other students. But we are talking about people who are already qualified. It's very hard to start from not zero, even minus maybe, you know, and you know already everything, and you see that the time is flying and you are behind to achieve what a fresh graduated is achieving in this country. So I hope that if there is any way to look into the rules for qualified people, the rules should be more fair for people, so people can work or find jobs that is matching their qualifications and skills. So as Ammar said, they can give more to this country, they can pay more taxes, they can be more independent, they can be more happy in doing what they are doing. So this will be very, very important points to be mentioned.
Thanks a lot, Tanya. And I'm pleased that you've talked not only about the fact that there are opportunities here, but also what some of the barriers to those opportunities are. And this thing about how do you translate qualifications across, I think is a really key point. Samira, if I can go to you on this point, I mean, it sounds like you didn't have too much difficulty in translating your qualifications across. I wonder if you might like to say something about that, but also, given your work with the wider Syrian refugee community, any other kind of opportunities that you've seen around this area?
Thanks, David. So when I came to the UK, if I haven't done a master's degree in civil engineering, it would have been extremely difficult to get to be recognized in the Institution of Civil Engineers. It's called the ICE, which is the professional body that represents civil engineers. And
was this a master's degree that you did here, or was it one from Syria, just to be clear?
It's a master's degree that I did here at the University of Greenwich. So having not done this, I wouldn't have been able to be registered in the ICE. And once I'm registered with the ICE, they say, okay, you're in a path, or in the correct path to be chartered engineer, maybe in 5 years' time, and that would be a selling point when I go and attend interviews with potential employers. So yeah, doing masters was really helpful, but I've seen people struggling, for example, who came from Syria with PhDs from Syria, and they struggled to register in the ICE or equivalent professional bodies. So yeah, professional bodies, they make life really difficult for those who don't have UK degrees. But in terms of education, I believe that the UK universities did a great job in offering flexibility and understanding people's situation. When people came and say, look, I've done 5 years, for example, of this degree, but I'd like to do masters in finance, and if we can demonstrate some sort of transferable skills, they would offer some flexibility. And I've seen great examples of this from just talking to friends and relatives. And basically the flexibility in accessing work, it's different, depends on the profession. So from what I've seen, dentists and doctors, they suffer the most. Dentists, they have to go through a test called ORE, Overseas Registration Exam, and this test costs around £4,000, and the pass rate is 20%. Whereas engineers, if we do a master's here, we're recognized as we're recognized at the ICE. Happy days, we can just turn up for an interview and start working and signing off projects as soon as we become chartered, of course. So yeah, my life was a lot easier than others, luckily. And yeah, I don't know if that addressed the question, or did I miss anything?
No, that's brilliant, Samir. And I know that you're joining us from Qatar today. So thank you very much. I know there's been a bit cutting out with the internet, but we could hear, I think, very clearly what you were saying. And, it struck me that there was a bit of a contrast in what you mentioned between the flexibility of many British universities in allowing those who've studied but who may not, have access to certificates, or, who will allow transferable skills to enter master's programs and get a qualification that would be recognised in the UK. Although, of course, there's a cost to that. Universities these days are not cheap places. And the resistance that you've described in many professional bodies in recognising qualifications or experience overseas. And that seems to me, an interesting contrast, and one wonders whether kind of the university sector and the professional body sector might have a conversation of some kind around that. I mean, clearly it would be something that would be not just refugees, but might be overseas qualifications more generally, but that could be an interesting line of discussion between the two sectors. So thank you very much, Samir. Can I go next of all to Adnan and ask you just to feed in on this point about what you think the main opportunities are for Syrian refugees to access work and education?
Yes, the first issue we need to approach is with the word refugee and the general view of refugee, that they come from developing countries and are not qualified to enter the job market. However, there are many opportunities for refugees and companies to benefit mutually. The people in question can be molded to fit job roles in the UK, as many are, in essence, blank canvases. I can say that Syrians are intelligent, skilled, and hardworking people. There are many case studies of Syrians who got the chance to join well-known organizations and are now thriving to prove what I'm proposing. I think the main challenge, if you would you like me to speak about challenges right now, or? Yeah, the main challenge is is with the language. Highly qualified refugees consider this the main obstacle to getting good jobs, especially in a market such as the UK, where the competition is very high. The second challenge is integration into UK society. However, through continued education such as ESOL classes and support groups specializing in integration, these obstacles can be overcome to reach a positive outcome for the UK and the individuals affected by war and other humanitarian crises. I would like to mention briefly about my case as a lawyer came from Syria. When I came here from Syria, there was a scheme. It's called Qualified Lawyers Transfer Scheme. So if you are a qualified lawyer overseas, so you can do an exam here and you will become a solicitor straight away. But we had a problem because one of the requirements for like a body here called Solicitor Regulation Authority, that Syrian jurisdiction as a lawyers, not as a degree, not as a law degree. My problem was not with my degree as a law. It was with the body where we registered in Syria, the Syrian Bar Association. It should be like an agreement between Syrian Bar Associations and Solicitor Regulation Authority. Most of Arabic countries, they have these agreements. For our bad luck, we didn't have this agreement. So they asked me, ask your Syrian Bar Association to make agreement with us. How can I ask them if I'm a refugee here and I can't go to my country? I don't have even my country passport and I have a travel document. So it's impossible. So this one of obstacles I faced to register with Solicitor Regulation Authority. But in general, maybe in like later questions, I have a small proposals, not only for refugee lawyers, but like for any refugees to participate the job market. So maybe in later questions, I will explain what is my proposal is.
Brilliant. Well, we'll really look forward to hearing that, Adnan. And I think that there were really a number of very interesting points there. Two of them I'd just like to develop. The first of them is this idea that, refugees come from fairly unskilled backgrounds. And, as all of the people on this panel from Syria demonstrate, that's patently not the case, of course. And this question about, having an agreement to allow for things like the qualified lawyer transfer scheme, that you need to have professional bodies in one country to another talking to one another. But of course, if you have to then go and make an inquiry of that body in Syria, the Syrian Bar Association in your case, as a refugee, that's extremely difficult. And there might be questions about your refugee status being ceased for having that kind of contact, at the very outside. So one can see here that the situation of refugees in this kind of area is different from that of migrants in general. So I think that was a very, very pertinent illustration. Thank you very much. Amjad, can I ask you to give us just a last word on this question about kind of opportunities and perhaps some of the challenges that Syrian refugees such as yourself have faced?
Yes, David. For the Syrian community or refugees in general, they have huge potential in workforce. I can't talk about Syrians. Their mindset or culture, it says employment never feed families. This is from let's say a Syrian culture. So they are all think of something that I either be highly educated or master a craft or a profession or a skill, or I would be an entrepreneur and have my business or startup. So if the government, I remember in 2013, again, I go back to that when I first settled here and faced all these difficulties, actually. I remember when I went to apply for one of trainings, they said, this is the last one, and the government policy now is cut. We won't subsidize or help or fund any training sessions. I guess if there are maybe some organizations who can help startups, who can, if we can see plenty of them, let's say if they can, I wrote something here, if they can offer business support networks, entrepreneurial networks, early stage support programs, connecting to mentors, a group of workshops that help them explore business ideas. They are adaptive and they have that mindset in themselves that we can start a business, master a skill. Yeah. I just want to go to one point, if possible, please. We also the shortage of lorry drivers in the past few months. I can count 10 of Syrians in the Syrian community who were lorry drivers in Syria. And when I asked them, it's your opportunity now to go, and they said, we face this theory test language. Language was a big challenge to us in this theory test. So if I can dig deep about this language thing, you know, there are 4 skills in the language. There is listening, writing, speaking, and writing, listening, speaking, and reading. Yeah. If we can get these drivers, for example, if we can get them through the theory test, they just maybe need 200 words to pass their theory test, or if we can focus on the few skills in language that they need to pass and go to the workforce. Yeah, this is what the point I wanted to raise. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a good one. And of course, it's very, very topical, Amjad, you know, with the lorry driver example. And I think it also speaks to that point that, you know, the more cuts and restrictions one sees on refugee training, and indeed, you know, training more generally in society, the more difficult it becomes for the UK economy in general. So I would very much endorse what you've said. And, you know, I think that those are some useful areas for us to start thinking about. As we move on towards the last question, which I would like to suggest we finish on this question, which has also been raised in the chat. So Sarah has asked a question about, given the different types of challenges, what kind of measures need to be put in place for smooth access to different professions and by whom? And I suppose I would ask a similar sort of question, you know, what do you think your experience tells us about how the UK could better integrate and benefit from the presence of Syrians and other refugees as well? So on that note, I'm going to start off somewhat in reverse order with Adnan, who I know was keen to come in on this point. Would you like to lead us off, Adnan? You'll need to just unmute.
So when you apply for any job in the UK or in any place in the world, they ask you for your CV, like the experience you have, the previous jobs you serviced in. So when you apply for first job here in the UK, they say, okay, what's your previous experience? We have no experience, so there is no chance to be accepted. So I have a proposal for this, and which is the following. The proposal is, let me exactly tell you what, yeah, the financial sponsorship that refugees need should be not less than 2 years and has to be provided through a government scheme similar to some schemes launched by the government in recent times. For example, the COVID-19 furlough scheme. I propose that the government launch a scheme to pay a company to pay companies and organizations to the value of 75% of any high qualified refugee salary with a maximum cap agreed with the stakeholders. Practically, this will not cost the government a lot because based on a quick calculation for a married skilled refugee benefiting from the proposed scheme with a salary of 2,500, he will not be entitled to get any universal credit benefits. While if he receives benefits, he could take up to 2,000. However, suppose the government paid the company 75% of his salary of 2,500. In the case the amount paid by the government is 1,875, which is very similar or even less to what an individual receives in benefits, especially in the first 3 or 4 years of their life in the UK. So most refugees here, when they come here, they have no source of like income, so they go and apply for universal credit at least for 2, 3, 4 years. So if we apply this scheme, so we can do something. Still, by following the principle of this proposal, everyone will be benefit, including the companies and people seeking refugee in the UK. So that's my proposal. Refugees, when they start, like companies will be motivated to employ refugees because they will get 75% of his salary, and they can make this scheme example for 2 years for refugees. After this 2 years, when we apply for other job, we will have like history with 2 years employment, also experience, everything. And financially, I think will not cost the government that much, especially as I mentioned, if we compare what this refugee getting benefit from government, either housing benefits, universal credit, whatever. So this is my proposal. I don't know if it does work somehow.
And you've obviously been thinking about this for quite a while, and it's certainly an intriguing one. I mean, it may be something that, you know, in the group of us, particularly with Ammar, you know, we give further thought to that. But as you say, you know, economically, it sounds like something that has legs, and it addresses one of the key problems in the UK economy, which is, you know, how to get highly skilled people integrated, how to improve productivity in the economy as a whole. So thank you very much for such a targeted proposal. Very much obliged. Amjad, as we're going in reverse order, could I go to you next? Is there anything, I know you made a number of proposals. Is there anything you wanted to add to those?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I can say something. If the government can help, for example, give some subsidies to big employers, companies, to offer refugees the training sessions, the work. I remember myself offered myself as a volunteer to work in one of the big companies. Yeah, these subsidies just to encourage these big employers to take refugees, get them trained, let them work. You can see how they can adapt. If they sometimes you don't need high skillful language. You don't need that. Just get familiar with the jargons. Make the little communication you need, and you do your job perfectly. You need the chance to get through. Yeah. Sometimes we underestimate our let's say skills, capabilities because of these things that we can't get through.
So it sounds, Amjad, very much like you're advocating also a kind of a foot in the door approach, helping people to get their step up onto the first rung of the ladder, and after that, you know, that should allow them entry to the job market in a more skilled capacity. So thank you. I think we've got some degree of consensus there. Samira, would you like to add to what you said earlier?
Thanks. So yeah, I mean, I can add 2 things. One of them is paid internships. If companies can offer paid internships or even some sort of free internship to a refugee skilled folks, they can then test them and see how can they integrate within the company, and then they can make the decision. They have 3 or 6 months to make a decision whether they can fit the culture or in terms of their skill set, if it's fit for what they want, and then they can make a decision down the line. And then secondly, if they can recognize the transferable skills and the past experience of these refugees. For example, if someone came to the UK with experience in a software that designs columns under earthquake loads in Syria, they can easily transfer these skills to another software in the UK. They just need to learn where is what, and then they can go through an exponential learning curve, if we can say. And in my case, like when I design a pipe to drain 100-meter square roof in Syria, I can definitely do that in the UK. Like rainfall events, pipes, they don't have nationalities. It's basically we're talking about phenomena and statistics. So things can be applied in Syria, and I recognize that we come to this country without experience in regulations. So, for example, I don't know about building regulations, what the EA wants, what Thames Water wants, what the councils would expect, and the guidance, etc. But yeah, they can go through exponential learning curves in this and adjust accordingly quite easily. So yeah, to summarize, paid internships and recognizing the past experience and transferable skills. But now, if I turn up to an interview and I say I have 7 years experience in Syria and 2 years experience in the UK, I mean, which is not the case in my case, but if I turn up for an interview and I say this, they say, okay, you have 2 years experience, good. And then they make decisions based on 2 years experience in the UK. This is what they recognize, actually.
Interesting, yeah. So, I mean, it's partly about CV and the way that interviewers and those who are offering jobs place on experience overseas in contexts like Syria. And I wonder, that's a changing of perceptions, I think, as well as, regulation. Thank you, Samira, very much for that intervention. And I'd like to pass it over to Tanya, our very first speaker. Is there anything that you would like to add on this point, Tanya?
Yeah, thank you, David. I will talk as a pharmacist because I don't know about other challenges, but I can talk more about my challenges. First of all, as Adnan mentioned, they are asking us a lot of paper. You cannot imagine. So how can I get these papers? And I am a refugee and I cannot go to Syria. And all the history of Syria the last 10 years. So I suggest to have like exams in pharmacy knowledge and in language. So we should meet the criteria that the British government wants. Then maybe we can have certain hours to work in special pharmacies to get to know all the routine about how we should work, how we should deal with maybe British customers or customers in the UK. Maybe it's different than, because each country has its own routine and mind of everything. So this one, and then we should have to be registered as a pharmacist so I can work as a pharmacist. So exam is essential in terms of pharmacy knowledge, in terms of language. Certain working hours is essential as well. We need less bureaucracy, please, less paperwork, less registration requirements. So the gate is open for Syrians, but not giving them what they deserve in terms of opportunities related to their skills and knowledge. So that's why, in my opinion, as I told you, a lot of people, they are changing their careers. They are going to other businesses because there is no more patient to waste years and years. And then the time is flying and we are above certain ages and we cannot do what we are qualified to do.
Many thanks, Tanya. And I think that draws things together really nicely. There seems to be a good amount of common ground between all four of our speakers on this. So thank you, all four of you, very, very much for your discussion participation. I'd like to just hand back to close the discussion part to our visiting fellow, Ammar, just for 2 minutes of comments on what you've heard and any points you wish to respond to, Ammar.
Thank you so much, David. And just like I want to highlight about the issues that Tanya and Samir raised. Samir said like he studied in Syria, but his master in the UK, and that's helped him to get like a job related to his specialist. While Tanya, the same issue exactly. She studied in Syria, and she finished her master degree in the UK, but unfortunately, the master degree doesn't help her to work as a pharmacist. So there is no unified governmental system to accept people. While, for example, if Tanya, she had graduated the first degree from Europe, they will accept her directly without any problem. Also, another issue regarding the language, what like Amjad mentioned about, yes, like there is a scheme from the government to help like refugees to improve their language. They offer them ESOL classes. Unfortunately, ESOL classes it's only for basic English, you know, like it's kind of, and they just offer 2 days a week, 2 hours a day, which is not enough for people with the qualifications to get like a work through this like ESOL. For example, there is no scheme for lawyers, English, legal English, or pharmacists or doctors or medicine, such as Germany, for example. Germany, they like for Germany hosted around 6,000 Syrian doctors, and they all now working in the like German hospitals, but the government had like scheme helped them to integrate in the German labor market during like involve them with German language with the specialists, for the doctor, for the medicines, for example. Then they let them just like accompany doctors for like a specific time. Then they passed exam, which is like it was for them after learning the language. It was easy, and the experience. Yeah, so that like I think it should be kind of scheme from the government, especially for the refugees, to help them integrate into the labor market.
Well, many thanks indeed, Ammar. And I mean, your comments on there seems to be a very disjointed, fragmented, sector by sector approach, I think, are spot on. You know, you've really brought that out very nicely. And of course, you know, the idea of kind of mapping where your specialities are amongst the refugee community, so that one has a better idea of exactly what kind of skills we're overlooking when refugees arrive here, and the kinds of schemes like the German one you suggested that a government might look at to actually take advantage of the kinds of benefits that refugees from a number of countries are very likely to bring. So a fantastic discussion. Unfortunately, it's all we've got time for right now. We can continue this hopefully some other day, possibly over a coffee in Senate House, at least amongst the speakers. But allow me today to draw the proceedings to a close by expressing my thanks to colleagues at the RLI and the University of London Refugee Law Clinic, of course to visiting fellow Dr. Ammar Bajboj, our 4 fantastic speakers today, Tanya, Samir, Amjad and Adnan, and to all of you for participating in the session today. This session brings to a close the 12th annual seminar series of the Refugee Law Initiative. In the meantime, please do have a look at the details of our forthcoming annual conference, which will open for registration next month and take place on the 29th of June to the 1st of July. All of the details for this can be found on our website, and the theme is Improving the Global Refugee Regime from Theory to Practice. So do come along if that's of interest, and maybe even consider submitting a proposal for a paper or a panel. The deadline for proposals is the end of March, 31st of March, so hurry if you're thinking about that. Until then, goodbye everyone, and we say thank you once again to all of our panelists. It's been a real pleasure hosting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye everyone.
Bye.